My name is Dr. Erica Lewis, and I'm a nurse researcher. Over the past 5 years, I've used design thinking to improve healthcare quality. I'm going to, in this video, introduce design thinking, and then let's get creative thinking together about how we might use design thinking in healthcare in the future. This image shows the 5 steps of design thinking: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. It shows well that divergent thinking is a key part of design thinking, which is a unique and important aspect of design thinking compared to other problem-solving frameworks. What it doesn't show well is the iterative and messy nature of actually implementing design thinking. Like a lot of other process frameworks, when you implement design thinking in practice, it's much more messy. You empathize and then define, move on to ideating, but back to empathy, on to prototyping, back to empathy, back to definition. And it does become slightly less messy towards the end, getting more and more refined, but always returning to that empathy. So in practice, it goes a lot more like the squiggly line here. But for explanation purposes, let's focus on each step one at a time to understand them. The first step is to empathize. Empathy is about gaining the perspective of stakeholders in the issue. Some strategies include interviews or talking to humans who've had the experience, creating parallel experiences yourself, or looking at data that helps to illustrate the experiences. Remember, this is a divergent process. You want lots of information, almost an overwhelming amount of information. When the design thinking team reaches a saturation of information about the stakeholder experience, they analyze for themes and then pick a specific aspect of the problem to work on. This is the defining phase. It's important that the problem be defined in a way that is clear, yet does not limit the number of solution options. Next is the ideate phase. There should be lots of ideas generated. If a group comes up with 10 ideas, there's going to be a lot of overlap among them. If each person in the group comes up with 100 ideas, there's going to be something novel and innovative in that list. This is a divergent phase in the process. I've seen some ideas that started out sounding crazy turn into very practical solutions. No idea is a bad idea in this phase. In the prototyping phase, the design thinking team comes up with a tangible representation of the solution. The idea is to create something that stakeholders can interact with such that you get better feedback on your ideas. Even if the solution is a process-oriented solution, a tangible interactive can be developed such that feedback can be obtained. Testing is the final phase I'll describe. Testing is where the design thinking team keeps trying increasingly sophisticated prototypes in order to figure out what's going to work for the stakeholders. Traditional market research methods can be used, and this is also a place where design thinking can interface with more traditional academic research. So perhaps the design thinking team can collaborate with a traditional research team to do some sophisticated testing of the ideas. Keep in mind also, though, that the design thinking process is inherently messy and that it's super important to return to the empathy phase to make sure that solutions meet the needs of the stakeholders. There's some important criticisms of design thinking. I won't address all of them here. 2 I'll touch on are empathy and rigor. There are some limitations to empathy, and we can never truly understand someone else's experience. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to incorporate in the perspective of multiple stakeholders. Some mitigation strategies can include being humble about what you don't know, and also having a diverse design thinking team. Secondly, design thinking has been criticized for having a lack of rigor or being ill-defined. I find this can be mitigated by combining the universal language of design thinking, which can be understood by a broad array of disciplines and a diverse team, with traditional research methods. Design thinking has some important value-added components beyond other problem-solving methods. Its recognition of divergent thinking is how we solve problems, allows a space for innovation. Design thinking prioritizes problem understanding Too many problem-solving frameworks gloss over this, leading to change that isn't really a solution. Design thinking deliberately includes stakeholder perspective throughout the process. Perhaps this is one way in healthcare that we can do patient-centered quality changes. Design thinking is interdisciplinary in nature because divergence requires diversity, and it provides a nice approachable language and framework for that work. Finally, it interfaces well with other methods, and this is an important reason that it can be used for interdisciplinary work. My name is Dr. Erica Lewis, and I hope you've enjoyed this very brief introduction to design thinking in healthcare. Please reach out. I'd love to talk with you.